Hi there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a book review for The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. The Spell Shop is Sarah Beth Durst's most recent publication. It is a standalone fantasy and it is geared towards adults, but I do think that this book could be enjoyed by all ages because it is a very clean, wholesome story. The way that I structure my reviews is I discuss the plot, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like, and then I give this book an overall rating. So if you're interested in skipping to any one of those particular sections, I will put timestamps down below. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. In this book, we are following a main character named Keela, and Keela is very introverted. She doesn't like people. She just likes being around her books, doing research, and her only companion is a spider plant known as Kaz. At the very beginning of the book, Keela decides to flee Elysium because there is political unrest, and these revolutionaries are trying to overthrow the current emperor. So she flees in a boat, and she takes with her about 4 or 5 crates of books. And she decides to return to this island of Cultry, which is actually where she was born. She lived there for a couple years during childhood before her parents moved to the city to give her a better life. So she doesn't really remember that much about Cultry, the people there, etc. But once she arrives there with Kaz, she returns to the cottage where she was born and begins to make a life for herself there. But she doesn't really want anything to do with the people of the island, the culture, anything like that. She just wants to live her life alone in her cottage with her books and Kaz. But because it is a small island, obviously her presence draws notice. Her neighbor, Lauren, ends up coming over. Some people from the village end up coming over. And then Keela has to find a way to make a living for herself. So she decides to start making jam and selling jam from her little cottage. But what the people of Cultry doesn't know is that she actually started dabbling in sorcery. No, Keela is not a sorcerer, but some of the books that she stole from the library were how to make spells. So she decides to use some spells to help her garden grow, to produce fruits. But then she also learns that the island is not doing very well. A lot of the trees are dying, the rivers are drying up because the sorcerers that come from Elysium have not been coming to visit the island, and they visit because they balance the magic, and the magic helps the island thrive. But because the sorcerers haven't been coming, the magic hasn't been balanced, and unfortunately a lot of parts of the island are dying, which will eventually affect the people there and their livelihood. So Keela decides to start addressing some of these issues, like helping trees grow, helping them produce fruit, helping water to start flowing, helping some of the native animals reproduce, like just things to essentially help the people of this island be able to live and survive. The whole time Keela is on Cultry, number one, she is developing relationships with the people there, including Lauren, a possible romantic relationship with him. But she is also worried that she's going to get caught because sorcery is forbidden for anybody who is not a sorcerer. And even though Keela is only doing these small little spells and eventually teaching other people how to do them, that is essentially against the law. So the whole time she fears that someone's going to find out, rat her out, and she's going to be prosecuted for her crimes. Going on to the things that I liked about this book, the first is the atmosphere that Sarah Beth Durst created. So her writing is quite lovely. It is filled with imagery. It is very beautiful, very atmospheric. And I just felt like I was on this island, that I was smelling the sea smells and the sea salt and smelling the berries and the flora and all of that when Keela was making her jam. Like I was on this island, living in this cottage, going about these day-to-day tasks as Keela's trying to make a life for herself. Sarah Beth Durst does an awesome job of drawing the reader into her setting, into her world through her writing, and I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the interactions that Keela had with a lot of the people on the island. So the author was definitely trying to mirror this after like the small town community type atmosphere where you have a community that's very close-knit. You have Keela, who, yeah, technically she was born in this island, but she's an outsider, come into that. Just loved how the author wrote about those ideas of us needing human connections, small towns having to come together to help one another out, giving time and or resources to those in need. They were just very wholesome, very sweet themes that the author wrote about. And then we have Keela, who for me personally was pretty relatable. So I know a lot of people, when I read some of the reviews of this book, did not like her, but the author was taking an unlikable main character and showing her growth over time to become a more likable character for some people. So Keela was very introverted. She didn't really have any human connections. Her parents were dead. She didn't have any friends, and she didn't want any. But when she arrives to this island, she kind of realizes how that's not healthy and grows as a person. So we do have good character growth for Keela over the course of the book, and then I can relate to her being introverted, really enjoying reading, finding solace, with my books. That's me, that's Keela. So I think if you're that type of person, then you'll be able to relate to this protagonist. Moving on to the things that I didn't like so much. Unfortunately, I found this book very boring for a majority of the book because we are focusing on character growth, character development, as this girl is going to live on this small island and make a life for herself. That is essentially like the first half of the book, and then I'll get into the second half of the book in a second. But there was no this can sound really bad, but there was no politics, there was no fighting, there was no wars, there was none of that you normally have in a fantasy, like an epic fantasy. And I really enjoy epic fantasies because they balance out, like take Robin Hobb. She balances out the fighting and the politics with the characters and the slice of life moments to make this masterpiece. So for this book, you only have the focus on the character develop and not so much anything else of what you would normally expect in a fantasy book. And because of that, I found it a bit boring. And this book was also pitched as a romance, and the romance is not a big focus on this book. It is a very small focus on this book. And in my opinion, it wasn't even that well done. The romance aspect didn't even draw me in as much as the community aspect of this book. So if you're going in thinking that this is going to be focused on the romance, it's absolutely not. I also found the plot of this book to be completely discombobulated, and here's why. So we get the first half of this book where it's all about Keela and, learning to live on this island, becoming a different person, making friends, having a relationship. And then the author decides to throw in this plot twist that absolutely 100% did not even need to happen. And we get introduced to this new character, and there's this new conflict, and we get the characters from the Empire, Elysium, coming to this island to deal with this new character. And for me, I'm like, okay, did she realize her book was kind of boring at the beginning and then decided to add in this new plot element, but now it just doesn't go together and it feels all... No, I did not like it. I don't think it was necessary. I feel like the author could have thrown in any other plot conflict. What would have been more interesting to me if someone learned what Keela was doing with sorcery and came to the island themselves to try and arrest her or deal with it. That would have been way more plausible than just adding in this new random character and her backstory. I just did not think it meshed well, and I didn't like it. This book also lacked very little backstory and world building, which in a fantasy book I really enjoy. So we learn about Elysium, we learn about the Empire, we learn that there's war going on there, but that's not the setting of this book. We also never get introduced to the creatures in this world. So there are mermaids, there are mere horses. Keela herself is described as having light blue skin and magenta freckles. What species is she? I want to know about this world and these creatures. They're not human. None of the creatures are human. They're humanoid, but they're not human. And none of that was explained. So I'm just expected to believe that these characters are mythical characters, but it's never explained, and that would have been really cool to have that backstory, but it was completely absent. All in all, there were aspects of the spell shop that I enjoyed, such as the atmosphere and some of the ideas of friendship and community, but then I just didn't enjoy some of the directions that the author took with the plot, specifically towards the half to last third of the book, and I would have liked to see just a better developed romance. In the end, I ended up giving the Spell Shop 3 out of 5 stars. I just wish I had liked it a little bit more and hadn't found it as boring as I did. Alright, you guys, that is my review for The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. Let me know in the comments if you read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see you all in another video soon. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!